Hey there, Jordan Sheridan, live Status Coup. It is 5 o'clock, Tuesday, January 17th. I have not showered. I barely ate. It's been quite a day of newborn stuff and working on my book. And I got an offer from a publisher, but now potentially another offer. So good things happening behind the scenes. But I didn't have much time to present myself. So hopefully I look good. I just slapped some water on my face. Big show, big guests. We are going to continue on. If you don't know, all the cards, all the deck is being stacked in Switzerland as we speak by the corporate elite in Davos. So we're going to get into Manchin and Sinema. Wait till you see this cartoon villainous scene between the two of them at Davos in Switzerland. Also going to get into BlackRock's CEO saying that they are being unfairly demonized. So get your punching bag. Also going to get into your retirement accounts. So if you are, a little bit older watching or younger and theoretically paying into a retirement, Wall Street is looting it. And they are now signaling that they're going to come up with new creative ways to loot your retirement. And finally, Sam Harris, who I don't think I've ever spoken about. He's kind of a pseudo-intellectual, very polarizing figure. He said some stuff about COVID the other day that I found really tone deaf. And I feel like it kind of has gone into this general psychosis about COVID and the total disregard for human life. So we're going to react to that. But joining me now, Zaina Day, who was with us yesterday and will be with us more often at Status Coup, and making his triumphant return, Steve Grumbine of Real Progressives. He is the co-founder of Real Progressives. He hosts Rogue Scholar, Macro and Cheese, a bunch of other stuff. Tell people what the shirt means for Chiefs.
Oh man, I picked yellow and blue because I wanted to trick the yellow and blue flags out there. I think I was anyway. This is the Chiefs, man. This is the old Paul Newman from Slapshot. It's awesome. It's classic.
Slapshot meaning a hockey movie.
Hockey movie, very much so.
Perfect. So thanks for joining me. And by the way, if you don't know, Steve is still doing Let's Get Ready to Grumble. YouTube's been hiding that as well as most of this channel. So make sure if you didn't see it live, go back and watch it Sundays, 5 o'clock Eastern. His last one is up on the channel now. Let's start in Switzerland. Smash that like button. Thumbs up right under the live stream. The more people that press like, the more people that will see this very live stream. Another public service announcement. Make sure you are clicking the bell next to the subscribe button. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you've clicked the bell next to the subscribe button and click on all notifications. Very important. A lot of people actually have said that they did click all notifications. They go back and suddenly it's opted out. So make sure you have all notifications and make sure you have on your iPhone or Android in settings that you have notifications enabled, because you could click all notifications, but in your settings, it's disabled. Now that all that boring stuff is out of the way, we're not breaking news about Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, but you have to give them respect. I at least give them respect that they don't have any shame. And they, at this point, are just flaunting their rank corruption and taking it globally. It remains to be seen if Manchin will run for re-election. Sinema, it seems, is going to run for re-election, and that's why she just became an independent, because she probably knows she can't win a Democratic primary. But they were, yesterday we reported that they were meeting with, who's who of the CEOs and billionaires at Davos. Well, today they were on a panel flanked by billionaire CEOs, and they literally did a high five. Let's take a look, Colin.
Difference for the American people in the last 2 years.
And we still don't agree on getting rid of the filibuster.
That's correct.
Right?
Thank you. I was
couldn't zoom in there, but they literally did a high five after agreeing not to get rid of the filibuster. And they were flanked by, looks like, count them, 4 billionaire CEOs next to them. And Sinema, I don't know. Colin, could you like zoom in on the video? I'm not really a fashion judge here, but she literally looks like Coella.
Difference for the American people in the last 2 years.
And we still don't agree.
It's real fur, fake fur, really, really unbecoming. Before we get to reaction, just the latest on these two and their corruption. Joe Manchin's top aide joins an oil and gas lobbying group. So this is recent. He joined Lance West joined the American Petroleum Institute as Vice President of Federal Affairs. So as Zaina could tell you, because she's been in this world, it's not just the politicians that are cashing out. It's all of their aides that once they leave office after doing the bidding of the fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, they then get cushy jobs at these places. Before we get to the rest of Davos, just your two thoughts on Sinema high-fiving next to the billionaires about basically blocking any progress of this country. Granted, getting rid of the filibuster, there would probably still be excuses made why we can't do things, but it would be one step in the right direction to get rid of it.
Go ahead, Zay.
Me first?
Yes.
I got a lot to say about honestly, every time that I see Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, I feel like they're the rotating villains, right? They sort of put themselves out there to take all the heat when all the other members of Congress almost are exactly like them, or of the Senate, are exactly like them, House members too, to be honest. So, when I see them doing things like high-fiving billionaires or Joe Manchin taking his photo ops with oil moguls, I know Paula Jean Swearingen told me that just happened 2 days ago in West Virginia. Right. I think, or a couple days ago in West Virginia, I think, yeah, this is just who Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin are. I mean, there's no shame anymore. Unfortunately, people say, well, primary them. Been there, done that in 2018 with Paula Jean Swearingen. We tried to get rid of Joe Manchin, but we keep voting these people in, and I never blame the voters, but they've showed us who they are. At least they're the most on the face out of everyone that we can point to for the rotating villains. But I think the Democratic Party likes their theatrics, even though Kirsten Sinema has now moved to independent, because that's someone to point to and blame. And sometimes I wonder if that's why they're so over the top.
And by the way,
it's not a surprise. I'm not shocked by any of this at all.
And by the way, you would know better than Steve and I, but I think it's bullshit that Manchin has to be this way because West Virginia is red. I mean, West Virginia was like for a century a Democratic state. It has a rich union history, a rich populist history. The reason that West Virginia has gone red is because the Democratic Party has gone red in West Virginia. It's moved to the right, and it hasn't provided an alternative to radical right wingers. If you actually had like a real populist left candidate running that didn't get a complete media blackout, which is difficult there, I think they would have a chance. Joe Manchin actually didn't win by that much against the Republican in 2018. So, that's just my 2 cents. I think it's complete nonsense.
Will add one thing. The West Virginia Democratic Party, they've been embroiled in racism. We've seen that recently, just a year ago. They have always thrown everything they can against progressive candidates, or even any candidate that's more to the left that's running. And so if you talk to the voters, there's a big distinction between the two parties and the people running. And the voters, I've talked to thousands of them, the actual voters in West Virginia, most of them are independent. Most of them are pro-union. Most of them support policies like Medicare for all. So there's a juxtaposition between the candidates that win and the actual people there. So when people say it's a red state, I'm like, have you talked to any West Virginians, or are you basing that on the fact that Manchin and Shelley Moore Capito keep winning?
Right.
So that is that. And there is a loss. There's a massive loss of trust because the Democratic Party abandoned laborers, and they've abandoned the unions and the workers in West Virginia, particularly, the coal miners who lost their jobs to the boom and bust and now need more work. It's been replaced with temp positions, same as here in southeastern Kentucky. So we're not really red, blue. Most people around these parts are all independent, but they are pro-union. They vote for Medicare for all. There is no party that's offering that right now that's running in these particular states. I mean, there's a few state parties, but there's not a lot going on. So a lot of people just don't show up at the polls and vote at all.
Yeah. And Steve, let me tee this up because I know this headline and the contents of this Washington Post Democracy Dies in Darkness article is perfect for you. Smash that like button, by the way, right under the live stream. But the Washington Post writes, the worry in Davos, globalization is under siege. Now, I'm not going to read this whole article, but I think this part in particular is interesting. Top on the agenda are concerns over a possible global recession. There's also the vexing challenge of climate change and the ongoing war in Ukraine and its downstream effects, including the snarling of the world's grain trade that contributed to the onset of famine conditions in swaths of sub-Saharan Africa. Beneath it all is a deeper Davos anxiety. Few institutions are so immediately connected to neoliberalism and the project of globalization as this forum. In an age of ascendant nationalism and great power rivalry, where the U.S. itself is waging trade wars, where does globalization go? The latest story of The Economist, which every year puts out an issue that tries to define the Davos zeitgeist, bemoaned the, quote, new logic that threatens globalization. It decried the Biden administration's, quote, abandonment of free market rules for an aggressive industrial policy. That's laughable. Pointing to a subsidy-laden program to power the United States green transition, as well as new efforts to make the nation a hotbed of semiconductor manufacturing. All of this, the classically liberal economist argued, has, quote, set off a dangerous spiral into protectionism worldwide and phrased the global order that the U.S. spent decades creating and securing in the aftermath. Steve, to me, that's code for the very people that have enriched themselves by selling like manufacturing jobs offshores, the very people that have basically rigged the global market to basically send a lot of the jobs to other countries, cheap labor, are concerned at like the pittance of efforts Joe Biden has made to bring a little bit more of that manufacturing back here.
Yeah, just think of it like this. The World Economic Forum and Davos exist above and over all national governments, including the United States, as they sit there and they debate things and they try to further diminish the role of government. That's what they were talking about. When Biden did things that were considered to be, well, let's put it this way. What Biden did during COVID, which was not much, by the way, they would have literally shut down countries in the global South for violating their structural adjustments with the International Monetary Fund. So the WEF, World Economic Forum, which is what this whole Davos thing is all about, is literally sitting there acting as a de facto government of the global government, because they've started infiltrating. They've been using different programs to place people that have been training in their young leadership program. And yes, they have a young leadership program where they try to put these people into power, into different positions at the Fed, in different deep state roles. And I mean, it's like not hidden. It's like right there in your face. So naturally, Sinema and Manchin are there to do the bidding of these individuals. They are puppets for that WEF, as are literally most of our elected officials are puppets for that WEF. We've punted our sovereignty away and have given it up in the name of fascist oligarchy and these corporate states that are existing above and beyond the reign of the government. It's just going to keep happening. So it makes sense that Manchin and Sinema would be there. Makes sense.
And keep those super chats coming. Thanks, Double K. We'll read the super chats at the end. One thing that stood out to me, and this rarely gets talked about, one of the big reasons for inflation, besides price gouging, is a supply chain crisis. One of the big reasons we have a supply chain crisis is because we stopped making shit in America about 30 years ago. And we outsourced it to China, Mexico, and other countries. I'm not against Mexicans, Chinese, other citizens of other countries having jobs. They're not good jobs. They're terrible conditions that these people work in so that we could get a cheap whatever. But at the expense of Americans, I'm not for that. But what that article and what it seems like is the zeitgeist, the panic over at Davos, is that there's starting to be more of a global outcry against that, and even some policy. They mentioned protectionist policy, even though I don't think that's what's Biden. Even though that's not what Biden is doing. I mean, come on.
Biden, hold on.
If it were up to Biden, we'd have the TPP today. He just knows that's not a winner politically.
Just remember, the reason we're having a very, very hot Cold War with China right now and Russia is because we didn't take care of business at home. We allowed our nation to fall apart over the last 40 years. China is savat kicking us right in the chin with their Belt and Road Initiative. They have got brand new everything. They are literally rolling out the red carpet to say we're ready to do business, but not just predatory business. They're there to be partners with people. And, you know, for all the shitlibs out there that try and act like, oh, we got to fight Russia. Oh, we got to fight. They're taking care of things, and they're offering an alternative to what we do here. So when you look at the protectionism Biden engaged in, if you will, was, hey, we screwed the pooch. And I think we've talked about this several times during his State of the Union address. The first one, second one, both of them were targeting China, prepping the runway to make sure that we could kind of splice that up, cut it right in half so that we could start protecting ourselves, because we allowed the shit to fall apart. So this is not a news story. This is a continuation of the larger story.
Right. And also, it's not only that we allowed the shit to fall apart, we allowed like entire communities and cities and states to fall apart. I mean, Zaina, Kentucky's peripherally, I guess, the Rust Belt, but you've been through the Rust Belt. You see these ghost towns that used to be manufacturing hubs.
Well, it's not only that, but it's bringing in, expanding beyond manufacturing is something that is happening with the Belt and Road Initiative and in China and Russia. Automation, and then what happens to the workers post automation. So a shift from the, hardcore, sweat-inducing, labor-intensive manufacturing that we glamorize here in the States. There are countries that are industrializing, but also moving away from that. We see this in our mass transit. We see the juxtaposition between our railroads here and the transportation of high-speed rail in China and Russia and Europe. And so in our infrastructure, as you guys know, with our, our water facilities, bridges, we're getting over and over again from the American Association of Civil Engineers, every 4-year report card, we're getting what, a D minus, close to an F this last round in 20, I believe it was 2020 when they did their last report. So no companies, we don't have the infrastructure to support the manufacturing. Our railroads are crumbling. And so we're also talking about bringing manufacturing in, but when our entire infrastructural ecosystem is degraded to the point that it is now, who are we going to be enticing? That's another part of the problem.
Right. I also want to
hold on. I want to piggyback on what she just said. This is really important. When you don't plan in maintenance into your view of what you've built, you build something back in 1930, 1940 or whatever. If you don't plan maintenance of all those things into your budget, not just new things, but maintenance of those things, they're going to fall apart. And we have been so short-sighted. We've allowed this whole deficit hawkery bullshit to reign supreme. And there's a lot of people out there who have no economic understanding whatsoever, fapping about the national debt and all the other stuff. And so they've got us strangled by these lies and myths. And so naturally the whole world's falling apart. And hey, rather than spend money, we got to gin up a Cold War with China so that we can get back on track. It would be comical if people weren't actually dying from the austerity that they're breeding. But
it's the opposite. It's not spending money, it's making money, because the Cold War with China and Russia greases the skids of the military industrial complex. Thank you very much. Got to use our sound effects. I want to show also, because while these Manchin, Sinema, or fist bumping at Davos, BlackRock, we're going to get to in a minute. Colin, if you could bring this up from Oxfam, this just came out. The richest 1% bag nearly twice as much wealth as the rest of the world put together over the past 2 years. What happened over the past 2 years? A deadly pandemic, which we'll get to later, is still actually going on, despite some people saying it's over. The richest 1% bagged nearly twice as much wealth as the rest of the world put together over the past 2 years. Super rich outstripped their extraordinary grab of half of all new wealth. Billionaire fortunes are increasing by 2.7 billion a day, even as at least 1.7 billion workers now live in countries where inflation is outpacing wages. Tax of up to 5% of the world's multimillionaires and billionaires could raise 1.7 trillion a year, enough to lift 2 billion out of poverty. The richest 1% grabbed nearly 2/3 of all new wealth, worth $42 trillion created since 2020, almost twice as much money as the bottom 99%. What's incredible about that is we showed a tweet yesterday from Biden. I don't know if you might not still have it, Colin. Obviously, he's not responsible for the entire global. Oh, there you go. That's why we love Colin. My plan is growing our economy from the bottom up and the middle out, creating hundreds of thousands of good paying jobs and lowering costs. Text me at, I still can't get over this. Text me at blah, blah, blah number so I can keep you up to date with Zaina. We said yesterday, this is just a marketing ploy to get people's numbers for his campaign. Anyway, Steve, who called you at 10 a.m. this morning saying, I got an idea, let's do an alternative jobs report? That would be me. I called Steve and said, I want Steve to do an alternative jobs report looking at the real economy, like economic inequality, like how many people are working more than one job, like, real markers that show real economic pain. So as Biden is putting out his neoliberal spin of his plan, whatever that means, as Manchin and Sinema are fist bumping, most of the globe is being looted. Most of the globe, working class globally, it's highway robbery. And the people at Davos, they have the media to spin fairy tales of their charity and innovation. Remember Elon Musk before he became, chief Twitter troll? The media puffed him up as a genius. It's just outrageous. Literally, we have a global theft. Whoever wants to respond.
I'm going to say this real quick, and then I'll let Zaina take care of the rest. But one thing's for sure. During the pandemic, the U.S. government spent huge amounts of money into Moderna, Pfizer, and all the other pharmaceutical companies to develop these vaccines. That money right there never touched anyone else. It was just massive. Just whatever you need to spend, spend it. Whatever you need to do it. Whatever, just do it. And that money was spent at the very, very top, the tippity top of the iceberg. And it never trickled down. It stayed in the fire sector. That would be finance, insurance, real estate. And all it did was stock buybacks and fatten the wealthy. And then as they jack prices up, because they started this global war, basically this economic war, as they did that, then they in turn raised interest rates that further funneled money up to the rich, the people that already have money. So they got a double dip on this thing. I mean, a double dip. And we didn't even get $2,000 checks, Jolton Joe Biden. So we at the end of the day, you saw that thing you put up from, I don't know, was it the Post or whoever that was talking about all the millions and billions of dollars spent and it could have this and that. The fact of the matter is that every penny of that came from a government, quote unquote, printing money to pay that money. It didn't come out of thin air from some weird place. It came straight out of a government. So the government was in cahoots, fattening the fuck out of these people, literally pumping them full of money. This is not an accident. They didn't just do this because, companies are gouging. The federal government literally paid it to them, And then to jack up prices to create inflation so that they know there's two types of knowledge. There's this knowledge that you kind of pick up and it can be debated. And then there's institutionalized knowledge. Well, raising interest rates when there's inflation is quote unquote institutionalized knowledge, meaning it's beyond debate. So they automatically raised interest rates, and the rich already knew this. So I had a conversation a while back with Mark Cuban, of all people, who said, it doesn't matter what happens, I will always make money. I will always get money. If you cut spending for the people, I'll still find a way to make money, because what do? They'll raise interest rates. I'm telling you, it is rigged in a big way. It's not a question of how, even. We know how. You can see how. It's just a question of, when are we going to fight back? When are we going to say enough's enough? That's my take on it. Anyway, I keep waiting. It doesn't ever happen, but I keep waiting.
And there's another thing that I think, it wasn't mentioned, but I have a feeling the folks globally are paying attention, and they might be worried at Davos about this trend. Zaina said this to me. U.S. labor strikes went up almost 50% last year. Oh, excuse me, the last 2 years. So 50% between 2021 and 2022. Union membership and strike activity has fallen in the decades since Martin Luther King's death, but more recently that's been changing. The number of strikes in the U.S. rose almost 50% between 2021 and 2022. In many industries, working conditions have worsened during the pandemic. Kathy Creighton, Cornell, said workers are stressed, quote, and with labor shortages, that exacerbates the stress because you have to do more with a lot less people. I think the people hobnobbing there over, caviar, champagnes, probably snails. They probably noticed that, wow, Americans who long have been a doormat, it's been a race to the bottom. We've been conditioned to basically accept shit. I would say the baby boomer generation, no offense. We have a lot of baby boomers who watch us, but a lot of older people I know have said, well, better than nothing, right? I think they're noticing that, wow, like, American workers are starting to fight back. And I think that is part of the panic, Zaina.
Well, I mean, we're behind on the game and on fighting back compared to, countries in South America, anywhere in the global South. Workers have been rising up. You've got workers rising up in the European countries. A lot of people don't realize what's happening in Iran has also been coupled with a nationwide general strike this entire time. So they've been on strike for 120 days now, general public strike. I mean, with small business owners even closing up shop to protest the gouging from the Iranian government. So you have it everywhere. We're behind in this country. So we're up 50%, but we are still behind here. And we do have a scout. I think that's part of the reason we saw the recent case, the recent SCOTUS case that is up right now, that they argued, what was it, on Friday, which could kneecap.
Is SCOTUS like an arthritic condition? Or what is
I always say SCOTUS.
Yes,
that's my Appalachian. Colin and Jordan were making fun of me for saying SCOTUS. SCOTUS. Yes, the Supreme Court. So we have had a case. There's a current case at the Supreme Court right now. I'm looking up the name really quick. But essentially, it is a company that is suing their workers. Currently, let's see.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. This is the over the strikes.
Yes. And let's see. It's up right now for a vote, and it's not just limiting strikes. What is happening? It's Glacier Northwest Incorporated versus International Brotherhood of Teamsters. And this case, I think, points to Davos's reaction and to what we may see in the future, further hampering labor organizing, that we're going to have to find solutions to work around, because this is now furthering individual rights of organizations and giving organization the same rights as people. And I know, Steve, you've talked about this forever. We've been working. I watched, actually, I think it was 2 years ago, a breakdown where you described what happened with corporations from the onset of the first corporation established to today, where corporations have shifted into becoming their own entities, their own identity, and just padding the pockets of the very ones at the top of these organizations. But now we're looking at the possibility that they can sue if the Supreme Court rules in favor of Northwestern. They can sue people who go on strike if there's any losses at the business, if there's any property damage, if there's labor lost for the cost of rehiring. Well, what isn't that the damn point of a strike? That's the damn point of organizing and pushing back, is to throw a wrench in their profits so that something will be done. So it's very concerning, and I talk about that because it's relevant, because we're going to see the ruling of that likely in the next week or two, coming down from the Supreme Court, and the future of labor is resting on that right now. But I believe in my heart of hearts that that's part of the same. We're seeing some of the same responses at Davos. We're also seeing companies starting to hire temp work. Temp work is up 85% in this country. And then temp jobs they are, 6 to 10, 12-month jobs. They don't offer benefits. They don't offer retirement. And I have been digging through Bureau of Labor and statistics. So I don't have the exact number, but I was shocked to see 5 years ago to now, especially millennials, the majority of work that they're getting is either temp or gig work. So there is no job security. And I think all of this is in response, and it's to pad the pockets of the billionaires. And we've seen this. I'll say one other thing and then I'll hush because I've been going on too long. But there's I've been running my mouth too long. But in 2019, when the Spanish influenza hit, companies made a ton of money. We started seeding money for, gearing up post World War I. We saw a similar model. We saw the massive wealth boom, with the Vanderbilts and the Worthingtons and others. And then we had the Great Depression. And I feel like we're seeing something very similar happen right now, just over and over again and consolidated.
I'm so glad you said over and over again.
Hold on.
But I have to say we're capitalist. And that's just the way it is. But I have to say we're capitalist.
So, Nancy's responding to that, and she doesn't like what you had to say. Go on, Steve. And by the way, our poll that I just did right now with 33 votes, would you rather hobnob at a Davos cocktail party or eat worms? 67% would rather eat worms. So make sure you vote in that poll. It's in the chat. Before I end the poll. But right now, 65% would prefer to eat worms than hobnob at a Davos cocktail party. Davos, Switzerland. I mean, I personally would rather that. But go ahead, Steve.
So I want to piggyback on this. This wash, rinse, repeat over and over again keeps happening over and over again. And it's not an accident. I mean, I did a show on here a few weeks back. I don't know whether it was the Grumble or whether it was whatever it was. I did a show on this, but the fact is that since 1917, when the Bolsheviks revolted, the U.S., Great Britain, all the economic powers of the world took a oh shit moment and said, what's happening here? And they had a massive overreaction to the Bolsheviks. And across the world, ever since then, they have done everything they can to stop socialism or communism from having any foothold anywhere, right? Well, Clara Mattei, who is like my spirit animal next to Jason Hickel, Clara Mattei is the coolest person in the world to me. She wrote a book about the capital order, and she talked about the trinity of austerity. And this is the tool that Zaina was speaking about just now. And she the over and over, because it's institutionalized knowledge. Number one, we raise interest rates. We mess with the money on that side. Number two, we bring back the power of the sack. We fire people. We make people nervous. We create temp work. We do things that makes people live in precarity. And then the last one is the big one, which is we cut spending and we act like we're broke and we can't do good things. So that 3-part act of the triune austerity model is what they do each time. And so what happens is once workers start exhibiting any kind of power whatsoever, they begin that 3-pronged attack to begin, and they do it, and it's just nobody questions it. Why would you question it? There's inflation. Of course you got to raise interest rates. Oh my God, there's inflation. Of course you can't spend money. Oh my God, there's inflation. Oh my God, we got to lay people off to bring it down, because the only way people like Larry Summers know to fix inflation is to do it on the backs of workers instead of cost controls, price controls, doing other things to improve the supply chains, etc. Because in the end, it's really got nothing to do with supply chains. These are intentional acts. They're acts that even if they could fix it like that, they won't, because the goal isn't to fix it. The goal is to keep us in precarity. And it's not even about them making more money. They win sometimes by losing money because it's about power. It's about the ability to do things that nobody else can fathom doing. And when you're in that stratosphere, you can do an incredible amount of things. And that's what this Davos thing is all about. It's about empowering that kind of behavior so that we, the people, the little people, we have a blind spot. We think, no way could our elected leaders be doing this to us. No way could our government be doing this to us. I love AOC. There's no way AOC could be doing this. There's no way any of these people could do this. Oh my God, vote blue, vote for Summer, vote for Pedro, all the other stuff. Oh my God, we got to vote harder. We got to knock harder. We got to do things to make ourselves feel like we're in power. But the reality is they put a veneer up in front of us while Davos is happening, and Davos is where the real power is. And that right there, unfortunately, whether we like hearing that, we don't have to like hearing it, but we do have to understand that that's a reality. And it will change the way you view your elected representatives. It will change the way you view the news. It'll change the way you view your president and all the people that are over there doing these things. If you stop thinking they're trying to help us, but they just had a bumbling moment, they just screwed up. Oh, if they'd have just thought of that, right? They're not there for that purpose. But it's hard. We don't want to believe that. We have this built-in protector that says, no, there are good people there. They're really good. And they're fighting for us. They're not. And that's part of the problem. We have to bust that virgin brain, and we've got to start showing people the real ugly underbelly so they begin to see it as it is, not as they would like it to be.
Once the good thing is 75% of our country are now independent, have moved away from both parties. Both parties are the steep minority in this country. I mean, people who vote or identify as Democrat or Republican are the other minority. It's less than 25, around 25 to 30% polls show. So most of our country identify as independent. One of the across the board polled zero trust in government is up in the 90%, or no trust in government and no trust in corporations. So most people are realizing, Steve, the question is, what the hell's next? Maybe this 50% increase in union organizing is a sign, and we're in for some good things in 2023.
I hope so. I'm going to say this, and feel free to tell me I'm full of it. I don't know how a third party is able to break through a duopoly that owns the process of getting you into the game. They own everything from the debates to, you name it, to the voting booths, every aspect of the system. They in particular are masters of. So they almost have to vote away their own power. They would almost have to go through this process. And to me, that would show that the truth is they're not really there to do that. Right. So in my mind, the value of a third party or a vanguard party is not from an electoral perspective so much as an organizing perspective to build up those parallel institutions to allow us to fight back, because we can't fight back, in my opinion, not in the way we would like to see fight back.
Can both of you shut the fuck up with your intelligence and profound thoughts? I got a lot more topics, and I only got Steve for an hour. No, I'm just kidding. You guys,
I love you
guys are great. I'm just kidding. You guys are great. I want to keep it moving though, because interestingly enough, the CEO of Citigroup, obviously one of the corporate Neanderthals that tanked our global economy a decade ago, and then BlackRock, they had some interesting things to say at Davos. So it's kind of like putting the global arsonists on stage to lecture us. But Colin, let's start with the Citi CEO who said, we expect to see a mild recession. But I want to key in on what you said after that.
We expect to see a mild recession, largely driven by the painfully persistent service inflation. It's coming off, but it's still pretty high, and we do expect to see central banks continue tightening as a result.
So is it just me, Or are a lot of the billionaire CEOs, the politicians swooning? Paul Ryan, by the way, is there. So is Anthony Scaramucci. A lot of political operatives are in Davos right now. A lot of maybe not billionaires, but very wealthy people. Aren't they the ones that have been price gouging the fuck out of America and the rest of the world? Driving the corporate price gouging, even though you won't hear that on, CNN, MSNBC. Shocker, John Fetterman won in Pennsylvania. He actually won better numbers in conservative areas than Biden and any other Democrat. And he was running on corporate price gouging, among other things. Isn't it interesting that she's kind of casually just dropping, because of the service inflation, when most of these swine at Davos are the ones driving it?
Did you hear what she said? She said the central bank. She's talking about the central bank, which is kind of hilarious because they obviously are working in cahoots. The thing is, they understand. They fully understand this quote unquote tightening. That what they're saying is keeping interest rates high, and all interest rates do. I mean, seriously, I need folks to understand this. All interest rates is paying additional money to somebody for money. Okay, the people that are taking out credit and having to pay higher interest or whatever, they're the ones that are bleeding it, but it's going somewhere. Someone's getting that money. And it isn't the central bank making out, because the central banks end up forking over whatever they have above and beyond their costs over to, in the US, for example, the Treasury. So it's not that. It really is a matter of control. And this is a way of funneling that money up to the wealthy. And so just be very, very careful when you think about thinking about how these things spontaneously happen. They are literally working hand in glove right now with central banks. They're on speed dial. They know each other. They're homies. It's not a joke. This is the game, set, match.
Did you say
not a joke?
Wonderful. So that's the city CEO. Now BlackRock, largest money asset manager on the globe, trillions of dollars of money, corruption scandal after corruption scandal. Their CEO spoke, Larry Fink, and he seems to think that BlackRock is being unfairly demonized based on their ESG investments. If you're not in finance, ESG has kind of become all the rage. It stands for let me make sure I got it right. ESV investing. It stands for environmental, social, and corporate governance. It's become kind of a thing that BlackRock claims that they're a leader in. And really all it means is these companies claim that they take into account environmental, social ramifications or considerations in their investments. So, for example, BlackRock, as part of their ESG investing, says that they have cut a lot of their investments in fossil fuels and shifted over to renewables. Most of that is bullshit and just PR marketing. But I want to play this clip of Larry Fink.
We're trying to address the misconceptions. It's hard because it's not business anymore. They're doing it in a personal way. And in the first time in my professional career, attacks are now personal. They're trying to demonize issues.
So the attacks on BlackRock are personal. Mind you, BlackRock, Colin, if you have the Yahoo story, BlackRock accused of greenwashing with $85 billion coal investment. That image, that's pretty funny because I was actually there covering that protest. But BlackRock, the world's largest money manager, has been accused of greenwashing its investment activities in a report that claims the company has as much as $85 billion invested in coal. So much for their, consciousness of, the climate crisis and all that. Not to mention, not just their investments in coal, but chemical companies, natural gas that's supposedly, so great. But again, these are the world's arsonists on stage, either being complete tone-deaf hypocrites like that city CEO talking about inflation when most of them have been driving it. And now BlackRock thinks they're being unfairly demonized. The floor is yours, whomever.
This is intentional. You know, I not only was trained in journalism, I was trained in public relations. I always remember that there are lawyers writing their talking point, you know, the talking points of CEOs and the talking points of their talking heads. It's intentional, and all that I'm hearing is gaslighting, the greenwashing, and then the woe is me. People are angry at BlackRock, even though, you know, we hold social responsibility in our hearts, and it's inflation, right? And then, just as you said, she told us, who was it before? At Davos,
The Citigroup CEO.
The Citigroup CEO, she told us what they were doing behind the scenes. She told us about the you know, corrupt collaboration, while at the same time also kind of victimizing herself as the poor company, the poor CEO, and gaslighting us. And it's just an obstruction from accountability, and it doesn't mean anything. And honestly, the good thing that I see when I look at that is most Americans, if they heard that, would be like, what is she talking about? Or that's BS. Or most people globally. There's a few, you know, coastal neoliberals or people that already have money that'll listen to that and buy it, but most people won't, at least in my opinion.
Right. But this is why it's so important. And Steve, you and I have talked about this as long as we've been co-hosting together. I'm not saying toss electoralism out completely. I don't think you have to do that. Like, you could vote or be involved with electoral politics, but also do organizing, activism, or you could build a third party, whatever. Like, they're not mutually exclusive. However, when you look at particularly presidential campaigns, Senate campaigns, bigger level campaigns, I think on the local level, this doesn't apply as much. It's all smoke and mirrors. Even running for president, all these candidates, their economic plan, their policies, their agenda is happening in Switzerland right now. That's who's setting the agenda. The flag's not for, you know, the flag's not for gimmicks. We live in the United Corporations of America. You want to expand it to the global corporations of America. So, you know, Biden or Mitt Romney or DeSantis, so they might have specific initiatives they want to do, but the big scale, neoliberalism, trickle-down economics, deindustrialization, public-private partnerships, which is just code for privatization, all that shit, these are the people setting the agenda. And I'm not pushing like you know, some people use agenda in more, shall we say, conspiratorial, anti-Semitic, you know, the globalists. We're not talking about that. I'm saying the economic agenda to essentially create a tale of two cities, but on a global scale, are these people. And the media props them up. The media props them up as the innovators and thought leaders and philanthropists. That's why Jeff Bezos, as horrible a human as he is, gets puff pieces all the time about, oh, he created a building for the homeless, or he created a new school, or, you know, things like that. So very important, even though this is a few-day agenda, it really crystallizes kind of how this global capitalistic system works. So
I want you to think about something. You hear us talking about the subjects that we talk about, the issues that we think are important. And then you watch what they talk about and the issues they think are important. There is not a scintilla of any kind of crossover. There's not even kind of like we're getting there, we're getting close. The issues they're talking about have nothing to do with what matters to us. And we keep thinking we're voting for these people to do these things that we're here talking about. Yeah, we want Medicare for all. We want free college, get rid of student debt, Green New Deal. We say we want these things, but there's none of that. None, zero, like none. Okay. And when you look at groups like BlackRock and you look at the buying up of properties in the United States, and you go back to the global financial crisis when we had Countrywide and all the others, and the mortgages and we have seen this exact corrupt game play out in the United States several times. We've seen it play out on the world, and it's going to keep happening. we're going to keep acting like, why, if we just vote a few more progressives in, we'll win. If we just do this, we'll win. We'll just win. But we're not even playing the right game. We're not even talking about the right subjects, because in the end, they're not hearing us. They don't give a shit what we care about. They don't care what we want, what we need. Zero. They have all of it. They have the game, lock, stock, and barrel. They've got the guns. They've got the media. They've got everything. And we literally have it's almost like we can't bear the thought that our voice isn't being heard, so we just keep saying things. Truth is, they're not listening, and they don't care. They're not there to meet any of the needs we bring up. Zero.
Steve?
It's wash, rinse, repeat.
Steve?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed.
That's what's going on. Public service announcement. By the way, smash that like button. 250 people watching. Let's get that number up. More people that press like, the more people that we'll see. Tomorrow, 5 o'clock Eastern, I will be interviewing Thomas Frank, the terrific author. If you remember back in the day, What's the Matter with Kansas? A famous book about basically people voting against their own interests. He also wrote Listen Liberal, which is really, really great book about the Democratic Party's shift rightward. Wrote Pity the Billionaire. So I'll be live with Thomas Frank, 5 o'clock Eastern tomorrow, followed by that. Ty will be hosting, Tommy Bayless. So that will be popcorn worthy for sure. So that's 5 o'clock Eastern tomorrow, me with Thomas Frank. Another reminder, Saturday and Sunday, January 28th and January 29th, put it in your calendar, mega marathons, 12 o'clock Eastern to 3 o'clock Eastern. Right now, we'll have Nina Turner, Marianne Williamson, Christian Smalls, Francis Fisher, Stephen Donziger. I got requests out to a whole lot of other people, so we're going to have other guests. Hopefully, Zaina, Steve could join for a little bit too. We're doing 2 days, 3 hours each, possibly go longer. Have a lot of fun. Also, hopefully fundraise, because the shows are meant to raise money to go towards our on-the-ground reporting this year. So put it in your calendar, Saturday and Sunday, 28th and 29th. Status Coup, and you can donate now if you want towards this fundraiser. StatusCoup.com/donate. Our goal is to raise 15 grand. That might be ambitious. Right now, I think we're at StatusCoup.com/donate. I think right now we have raised 750. So we've raised 750. The goal is 15 grand. So a little over 14,000 to go. So any amount, if you can afford it, StatusCoup.com/donate. It's going towards our on-the-ground reporting, which, by the way, we're going to be sending Lewis to the border pretty soon to cover the border crisis. I have a feeling the way it's being framed, both on Fox News and CNN, isn't exactly accurate. So we're going to send Lewis to the border. I'll be back on the road soon. I do have a newborn, so I'm not going on the road right now, but I will be back on the road soon. So did I miss anything, Zaina? Any other PSAs?
I think that's it. Subscribe to our Substack.
Yes. Subscribe to our channel. Subscribe here if you're new, and subscribe to our Substack. And as a reminder, very important, make sure you click the bell for all notifications. So here on YouTube, next to the subscribe button, there's a bell. Hover over it, click it, and then click all for all notifications. And then make sure on your iPhone or Android that you have notifications enabled for YouTube, because our percentage is actually low in terms of the amount of subscribers that have clicked all notifications, but also have it enabled. All right, Colin, I'm skipping over.
There's one more thing. Also, go in and check out the videos that we've done the last, few weeks. I know it's been the holidays and stuff. Steve, I know I just watched a couple of yours that I had missed myself last night, and they were awesome. So go back, check out the Get Ready to Grumble, check out the Friday My Ways, check out the Right Wing Insanity Reports and our live streams. Throw it on while you're doing dishes or whatever. It's pretty evergreen content, even though we've got up-to-date news. We did a lot of thought pieces during, the holidays. So go in and check them out if you haven't.
Yeah.
Oh, and Ron Placone's in the chat. We love you, Ron.
And also, lastly, click on the shorts, because we're doing more shorts, which are the 1-minute videos. We're actually doing original shorts, not just clipping things from the live stream. So not to get into the weeds, but it's a different algorithm in the shorts. So we're hoping if we can get more views on the short videos, which there's, if you go to the YouTube homepage, it has the tab for live, it has the tab for videos, and it has a tab for shorts. Click on the shorts, get us more views on that, like, comment if you can. I want to go to this COVID topic while I have Steve here, because as far as I know, I've had it, Steve have had it, Zaina, I think you've had it. Some of us have had longer term symptoms in terms of long COVID, but I find it pretty incredible. COVID has become so polarizing between vaccines and mandates. And is it, now it's like, are people dying with COVID or from COVID, which I think is ridiculous. And, if you get in a car accident, and you go to the hospital and you die as a result, you probably died of something, but, like a hemorrhaging or, but the car accident caused it. Anyway, but Sam Harris, who's kind of like this, I don't really know what you would classify him as, like an intellectual or I don't really know. He's very polarizing, but he said something on Twitter the other day that got a lot of pushback. I took it in a bad way for different reasons than other people, but let's play it and then I'll get your guys' thoughts.
Take it back to COVID for a second. In one way, we got very lucky that COVID wasn't worse than it was, right? It could have been much, much worse. It could have been 10 times as deadly or 50 times as deadly. And we would have lived through, or many of us wouldn't have lived through something truly awful. But had COVID been worse, just enough worse to really get our attention, to really be undeniable, we would have had a different political conversation around it. There wouldn't have been the same kind of vaccine skepticism. Brett Weinstein would not have been releasing 80 straight podcasts on the dangers of the vaccine if a few variables were changed. I mean, just take that, leave COVID exactly as it is, but just make it preferentially dangerous to children rather than to old people, right? You just flip that around, the variable of age. If kids were dying by the hundreds of thousands from COVID at a rate of whatever it was, 1%, say, but if it was pretty much all kids, we would have had a very different experience, right? And the patience, that there would have been no fucking patience for vaccine skepticism, right? And everyone would have recognized that this is not my body, my choice. This is, you're not going to kill my kids with your ignorance, right? And you change one other variable. What if the vaccines actually really did block transmission much better than they in fact did, right? And there was a moment where it was only rational to expect them to block.
So I guess, this could be said for really anything. It could be said for, like, I don't know, the Iraq and Afghanistan war. We could have lost 10,000, we could have lost 20,000 soldiers. You could really say that for anything. But to me, what really made me kind of grossed out by that comment, and makes me grossed out by a lot of people who talk this way, is they make it seem like it wasn't really fucking horrible and like really cataclysmic. I don't know if he knows this, because he made it seem like it's most people that died were older. That's true. But if you just look at the numbers, Colin, if you have the graph that I sent you, we've had 270,000 deaths under the age of 65. So that's 250,000 people that have died that are not technically old. A lot of people have pushed this idea, it's mostly old people dying. Well, technically, the majority of people who died were older, but that's still a fuck ton of people that have died from this that are not old. Not to mention long COVID, which is not covered at all by the mainstream media. And some people have almost made out that it's psychosomatic and in your head, which I think is really gross, because I know people who have experienced long COVID. So I guess I wanted to talk about this because I don't know if it came off to me that Sam Harris was kind of saying like, this could have been a lot worse. Like, it wasn't really, really bad. But I think that it kind of gets minimized how bad this really was by people who say, well, look how many people die of X per year or this per year. And, oh, you're making it into a much bigger thing. I mean, not to mention, you have right now, by some estimates, 4 to 5 million people that are out of the workforce because they're disabled and can't work. The death count, I think it's underreported how many people have died. So I'd love your thoughts, because to me, what bothers me about what he said and this mentality is almost minimizing how many people that were not 85, 90 have died, how many people have long-term illness, and also the unknown of, I mean, COVID, you look at the studies between nervous system, blood clots, heart problems. I don't think we know the true ramifications in the long term of how this has affected people.
You got a comment in there from a Bren R, who I think I agree with. And it says, wait, isn't all of that Sam's point? I think he's trying to make the opposite point you're thinking. He's trying to refute vax skepticism, etc. And I agree with that. And I'll explain why. You know, COVID was dubbed the boomer remover a while back. That was kind of like one of the slurs. And there's an entire disgraceful, disgusting, useless, libertarian-minded belief that if you're fat and you're out of shape, go work out at the gym so you don't get COVID. Don't, you're a fat slob. You eat too many bonbons. You deserve it. Don't ruin the rest of us who work out 6 hours a day and try to make us have to, do anything different with our lives. It's all you fat slobs out there eating at McDonald's and all you old farts that were going to die anyway. And, blah, blah, blah. What he's saying, though, is it would have flipped around in terms of our brains and the way we process things. And those fools over there that took that approach, it would have been very radically different had it largely been focused on children, had it been wiping out children. And they would have said, oh, shit, yeah, forget this whole my body, my choice thing. You ain't killing my kid. And it would have changed. That's what I think he was saying there. I could be wrong, but I think that's what Bren R is saying in the comments here as well. But I was reading up on this, and that genuinely is the disgraceful right-wing libertarian mindset.
And by the way, what you're describing essentially is what Joe Rogan pushed in the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. And well, a bunch of other people that pushed it too, don't we?
Yeah.
The lemmings right below the Rogan status that did the same bullshit. And the thing is that you can be both skeptical of our government, skeptical of the vaccines, understanding full well that there was a rush to get these things out there to market. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to find out, because we didn't have 20 years to observe the results and observe the normal testing. There's a lot of legitimate criticisms to be heaped at Big Pharma and the approach they took to these vaccines and the governments that preyed upon people to keep us in the position we were in. There's a lot of but I almost died from COVID. We know this. We talked about this before. Literally, I remember walking. I drove myself to the hospital. I had to walk up a hill. Lungs. I mean, I was coughing up golf ball sized chunks of stuff. I got in there. My blood oxygen levels were in the 80s. I mean, lights were flashing. They were rushing me in. I mean, it was terrifying. 106 fever. I mean, terrifying. I was inside the COVID ward and people were dying, coding in there. It was terrifying. No joke. So I lived that experience. I know what it feels like. It was definitely not the flu, and it definitely wasn't in my head. But I will tell you that the things that they're saying, what he was saying there, when people think of the old, they think, well, they lived a good life. Hey, I'm not going to change my whole lifestyle. You stay home, grandma. You don't need to go out and socialize. Let us live. We're healthy. Why do we have to worry about you? It's the disgraceful selfishness of libertarian-minded people that did this. And I'm not shy at all, by the way.
You know what, Steve? You've changed my view. You've changed my view, not about how I feel about it, but maybe I misinterpreted what he was intending to say. So I'm glad we talked about this. I still think maybe this isn't what he was saying, but I think this mindset has come in that this is mostly something that old people are dying of because we become numb to death in this country, not just about COVID. I mean, look at the school shootings, right? I mean, look at the myriad of things people are dying from every day. People dying from homelessness, people dying from food insecurity. It's just that people move on. I mean, 20 kids killed in Uvalde. We care for 2 weeks and people move on. But I don't think like a quarter of the deaths have been under 65. Of course, majority have been older people, but there's a lot of younger people or middle-aged people that died way too early because of this. So I find it disgraceful when you see, and we know who they are, these big YouTubers, tweeters, podcasters who just minimize this as, hey, it's, it's old. It's a thing for older people, but the rest of us just move on, let it rip, and be done with it. I don't agree with that.
Sam was doing that a little bit. This was the small clip. I watched a clip that Ron had posted yesterday that was like the full clip. So, and I can see exactly where Steve's coming from with just the clip that we listened to.
Yeah.
But he was using this entire example as a framing for a conversation on religion and other things. Like it was just this broad, and it turned into this Jordan Peterson style, just riffing that half of it was BS. You know what I'm talking about?
Incel libertarian nonsense. Yes.
Yes. And so to me, when I heard it, I can see where Steve is coming from now, just if I pull just that clip out from it. But listening to the whole context, it felt dehumanizing, because COVID was being used as an example for something else. And then to talk about children's death. Well, if he was making the point, we would have paid attention to it if it was children's death, more children died. But he was just talking about the way society talks about things. The way that we often talk about war in this country, especially pundits, the way we talk about healthcare, the way we talk about COVID, can be extremely dehumanizing. And I kind of got a little bit of that from him using COVID for that analogy.
What angers me is the very people that have kind of minimized it the most. The very people who have basically made it like it's the cold, like at this point it's the cold. The very people who have basically dismissed long COVID and either don't talk about it or say, it's in your head. Or the very people who have made it, these things happen. We shouldn't have any mitigation at all, and have made a lot of money doing that, are the same people who proclaim to be champions for Medicare for all and the idea of collectivism in healthcare. And we're all in this together. So I find that very, not just not Sam Harris in particular, but this mindset that it's only affecting old people. So, we shouldn't worry that much. And long COVID, what is that? There's no way to calculate that. And the very people trying to minimize it by saying, well, are they dying with COVID or from COVID? So it's really just all hyped up, are the same people saying we need to have Medicare for all marches and, healthcare for all and this and that. I see the two as connected. How on one hand are you outraged by the United States government, complete disregard for human health, human dignity, human rights, which is what I believe Medicare for all is about. But then you try and minimize this. Well, it's really just affecting old people. Well, who cares? Throw granny over the fucking Titanic. And long COVID, that's overblown. And Omicron, that's just a cold. Well, it was a cold that killed the most people during this pandemic. That variant killed the most people because it was so fucking contagious. So, I think when I talk like this, you have people who, he's advocating for lockdowns and mandates. No, you got to get out of that lizard brain thinking. This isn't about advocating for a lockdown. It's not for advocating for a mandate. This is advocating for collectivism. The media and the government have basically created a psyops that COVID is over. It's not over at all. It's spreading it's spreading like wildfire, particularly in the Northeast, where Steve and I are. Literally, I tweeted it the other day, but Puck News reported a freshman Democrat told them that literally during this speakerthon, the 15 votes, House members were literally standing outside. They took off their masks inside because they don't want to be seen with a mask, but outside they were wearing masks, coughing because they were voting while COVID positive. Not a few, like a shit ton of the Congress people that were voting were COVID positive and took off their masks to go vote. And then he called it like a hospital wing outside the actual chamber because they had COVID. People are going back to work with COVID right now. Literally, hospital wings, nurses are being forced to work with COVID. And why that matters, you say, so what? Well, would you say that's okay if think there was never a thing called COVID? Would you think it's normal or healthy to all these fucking people be working with the flu, or for people to get the flu 3 times a year? No. Wouldn't you be concerned that you might have some long-term effects for your children or your elder to continue?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just saw a really great comment from Ron pop up, and he said, also, we've done nothing. Ron Placone says, we have done nothing to protect kids in school. We have also done nothing to stop bullets from flying in classrooms for decades. Society would care more if more kids died? What a fantasy. I mean, that's true. The child abuse is way up. Domestic violence is way up, which impacts children. School shootings. Now families can barely get a medical card for their kids. That used to be a thing that poor people did. I mean, I grew up poor. Everyone had a medical card, no one has one anymore. So I know most of the families I know don't have adequate insurance for their kids. No health care. So where's Sam coming from? We weren't taking care of our kids during the pandemic already. And the second variant that came was killing children. Thousands of children were getting hospitalized, sick, or now have long COVID.
Hey, and Jordan. I got a boogie, brother.
Promote yourself.
All right. Check me out over there at Real Progress in Action, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I do the Rogue Scholar. This week, I've taken a personal week off, so you won't see me until next Monday. Saturdays, I am the host of Macro and Cheese podcast as well. Please, it's a podcast. It's not a video, so check it out. Go Spotify, SoundCloud, whatever. And then, of course, I'm here with Jordan, and I do my own Friday My Way at 5 p.m. Friday nights. And with that, thank you guys for having me on. It was so nice to be on a show with you, Zane. I really appreciate meeting you here. And Jordan, welcome back, sir. It's good to see you, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you, good sir. Take care. And the final thing I'll say on this subject, I don't know what you think, Zaina, but I feel like even particularly on the left, COVID has become, it's been made very tribal. It's almost like the force the vote of medicine. Or, people get very triggered if you have a different view on COVID. People get very triggered as if you're for big pharma if you don't think exactly like them. People get very triggered if you put out information that masks prevent infection. I don't know I think I know where it comes from. I mean, a lot of it comes from media hosts, and so-called experts, pushing out stuff. But it's alarming to me because on the left, not just over COVID, but a lot of other things, it used to be the idea, at least when I got into politics, that it was actually embraced that we all didn't agree all the time. It was actually embraced that there was some disagreement, not unlike values. Like if I start saying, hey, we need better access to healthcare, yeah, you'll know I sold out. But now, like I even see it when I post stuff about, the high number of COVID deaths on a certain day, or if I post something about long COVID, you'll get people in the comments like extremely triggered, acting like I'm hysterical or this isn't real. And I don't know. I think that's very dangerous because when you're looking at, I haven't gone through the whole Twitter files because it's like there's a lot, and I think they're on like Twitter files 20 now or whatever. But obviously, there's been some censorship of dissenting views, and that shouldn't be. I think there should be a robust discussion. But it seems to me that on the left, it's become very tribal that if you have a different view, or you think, or if you even state COVID is still happening, or COVID is still should be treated like a crisis. If you say we should have some mitigation, literally somebody went at my head like, well, what are you calling for a lockdown? No, you know what the number one fucking thing I would call for right now is an unprecedented investment in indoor air filtration all around the United States, which, by the way, China does. They did it long before COVID. We should be spending probably hundreds of billions of dollars to provide cleaner air outside too, but particularly indoors, in schools, in sports stadiums, in very crowded spaces where tens of thousands of people go, because studies have shown as much as masks, better filtration can actually kill not just COVID, but a whole lot of other things. And I answered that person that, and they said, "Oh, I've never thought about that." So it's just like, I think this topic, I don't even talk about it that much on air because it's just become, people can't even listen objectively to other views.
I blame social media, and science does too, to a certain extent, social sciences, because we're in our echo chambers. And if you are on Twitter, you are following folks they're tweeting out 270 characters, 240 characters, sorry. So you don't really know, you don't get any nuance, any substance. And what you're seeing a lot of times in those circles are the same people's content over and over again. So it's a constant hit of confirmation bias, right? We can self-select everything from the social media that we engage with to the online media that we engage with. So if somebody sees an online, someone that they like, say one thing that they dislike, they may cancel that
unsubscribed.
Yeah. and it's one thing, because they're able to, we are right now able to curate the information that we get to such great detail that I think a lot of people are unaware of many things that can impact us or are impacting us right now. COVID is a great example. I'm not pro mandate, but I believe there's a little bit of nuance to that. I'm not for the vaccine mandates, but the people that are against mask mandates, which is kind of leading into something that you had on the list. I didn't know if we were going to talk about it or not. So I won't blow what we're about to talk about. But people that are against vaccine mandates, that are against, mask mandates, the mask mandates kind of, I don't understand. I can see if it's not effective for COVID, but I believe that there's not enough nuance, and that people aren't looking to science, and that it's about confirmation of bias. It's about people feeling like they have a little bit of an edge. They have some secret knowledge that others don't have. I don't know how to work around it or how to make it better, other than to just keep putting facts out there and sharing them as an organization, and hopefully there's more news organizations that'll do that out there, because our mainstream media has been biased as well. So
one thing I know, I believe that there's going to be a real crisis with long COVID in the next 3 to 5 years in this country. I believe the media won't cover it. I think it's just going to be like the gun, like mass shootings in this country. It'll be a lost silent generation. It will be very similar, unfortunately, if you have chronic fatigue syndrome, or, a lot of these kind of silent killers that sometimes people feel like they're going insane because people look at them like, oh, you're a hypochondriac, or it's in your head, or whatever. Fibromyalgia, if you experience that. When people can't see physically pain sometimes, if you don't show a cast for a broken arm, or you're bald from chemo or whatever, a lot of times people disregard that. And I'm gonna make a point, even if it kills us on views, I'm gonna make a point to try and interview people. I have some requests out for people who are experiencing long COVID. The problem is it's very hard to schedule with them, understandably, because they don't know when they're going to be able to get out of bed. Literally.
I was diagnosed with it. I have had too many strokes since, and I started bartending. And I thought, oh, I can do it. I can bartend. And I ended up in the hospital. What it caused, is intracranial hypertension, which a neurologist, as well as my brother who works under neurology, he's a surgical technician, so he helps with brain surgeries. And he said that hospitals are seeing, and my neurologist said the same, are seeing a lot of excess spinal fluid. So that hasn't been confirmed. I'm not giving medical advice or, but there's a lot that we still don't know about long COVID. But there are markers out there that are being identified, such as exhaustion, such as migraines, pain, a lot of pain, hard to breathe. Folks are talking about they can walk up a few flights of stairs and have to stop and rest because they lose their breath. So I agree with you, and I think that it's really impacted also the millennial generation as well. So I don't believe that it's just boomers and older folks. I know a lot of younger folks that have these types of symptoms, but it's painful and it's exhausting. And I think you're right. And I think that ignoring this and not taking the humanitarian angle and demanding that our government starts helping is the wrong take.
Put aside like COVID for a second, right? I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it used to be on the left that if there was like a mass disabling event, that would kind of be a big story, because one of the things we champion on the left, and I know everyone's got a different definition these days of who's on the left and who's not. If you consider yourself on the left, one of the big things we champion is the vitality of healthcare. I wish more of it would be being healthy, but who's got the time these days to be healthy? We're all, you're working 2-3 jobs and whatever. But the point is, when you have tens of thousands at this point, I mean, I remember I called John Hopkins on behalf of a friend a while back to try and get them in the long COVID program. It's one of the only hospitals in America with a long COVID wing. When I called, I think it was like a 9-month wait for an appointment. When I called back, it had bumped to over a year in just 2 months. So I think this is a much bigger problem than people know. I think the media is not going to cover it because part of the psychops behind COVID is over. It's just getting back to business as usual. Professional sports, the concerts, the cruises, vacations, day-to-day business. It's not either or. I'm not calling to lock down society. I'm not calling, for anything like that. But I do believe, especially during the winter when cases go up, there should be some mitigation efforts. I do believe, the CDC is horrible. I might as well call it the Capitalism Defense Center. They kind of they meekly suggest masks. I believe the people who have said, oh, they lied to us about transmission, they lied to us about this. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Now, there have been people that have lied, like Fauci, but there's also been like just changing science based on an unprecedented novel pandemic where we thought it was X or Y, but you learn through different variants and different things that your assumptions were wrong. That's also science. So it doesn't mean that everything is a lie and everything they told you is a lie. That's conspiracy. That's conspiracism. That is conflating being anti-establishment with being anti-science and anti-data.
There's a large, and it's growing on the left, a large movement of anti-science, and
it does not make you braver or more lefter to conflate believing that mitigation should be taken or believing, in certain medication, Paxlovid or things like that. Well, for the people saying, oh, you're big pharma, or do you believe that for diabetics who take life-saving insulin? Guess who's price gouging and making a lot of money off of insulin? Big pharma. So are you against insulin? Are you against, I don't know, ivermectin was made by Merck. So there's just been a huge, I believe, and I think it's intentional, distortion and conflation between changing as you learn more about something. I think from the start, they should have never said if you get the vaccine, it will stop infection. Because how could they have known? How could they have universally known? And they
that there was no through line in that anyway, because we were getting different information from the CDC, from the World Health Organization, from the NIH. You know, the World Health Organization did not say that it wouldn't. The NIH took a little bit of a more moderate stance. The World Health Organization had a stricter stance. And then there were different types of the vaccine that were out there that were impacting people in different ways. If you remember, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was recalled. But I mean, I agree with you with, I don't judge people who are, you know, do the homeopathic medicine and try those kinds of things. But there are life-saving medications. There are necessary surgeries. There are necessary treatments. Right now, people are suffering from things that they can't go to the hospital for. Insulin is something that you mentioned. Folks that need any kind of treatment. I mean, even dental care. Dental care is I believe it was the 6th. I don't want to misquote. It's one of the top leading causes of death because it causes infection, and then it causes a sepsis, and then people have like cardiac arrest or other issues from not being able to get something as simple as going to the dentist office and getting your teeth fixed. And you're talking about something as complex as long COVID and doing the research on that and being able to look into it. If we naysay medicine from the leftist perspective, then what are we fighting for when we're fighting for Medicare for all?
That's my point. And you don't even need to do the research. All you got to do is look on Twitter. Are all these people lying that they have long COVID? I mean, as a leftist, for example, another issue, I don't want to make this go for 3 hours. Another reason it's become tribal on the left, Ukraine and Russia. Well, I don't know. As a leftist, I thought we're supposed to be against innocent people being slaughtered. So when I speak out on Putin is killing innocent people in Ukraine, I have also said Russia has legitimate grievances. I get attacked as like, oh, you're pro-Ukraine. Well, you don't care? I mean, 40 people just got killed by a missile today in Ukraine. That doesn't mean I forget the Russians who were killed in the Donbass, but like, it's not either or. There is such thing called nuance, which has basically been a cancelable effect, a cancelable event on the left these days. But my point is, I'm pretty sure we should care if thousands of Americans are having long-term symptoms from a virus that is still pretty unknown in terms of its long-term effects. Anecdotally, I got asthma from COVID. There's worse things, but I didn't have asthma before. I don't know if I get it again, if I'll have worse symptoms the second time. I might have had it more than once because I've been on the road sometimes and that felt great. But I think the left in particular needs to start waking up. This is still a pandemic. It's not normal to have multiple waves of a contagious virus spreading around 2-3 times a year, that people are getting sick with 2-3 times a year. This narrative of mild infection, well, the people I've talked to that have had it recently, it wasn't so mild, even those who have been vaccinated. And I know people that have long COVID, and you shared, you've experienced that. So anyway,
yeah, we should be demanding, we should be holding Big Pharma accountable. They're pieces of shit. I mean, I'm going to say it. Big Pharma sucks, man. I mean, you know, they brought us the opioid crisis. They, you know, rip people off. Hospitals rip people off. Yes, they do care that we don't need for those that can afford care. They treat for things that you don't need. Everything is way overpriced and bloated, just like increasing the vaccines by 400%, price gouging for things like insulin. It's everywhere. Big Pharma is a damn mess, and we should hold them accountable. But what we should be calling for is nationalized healthcare, oversight, deprivatization, especially, I mean, when it comes to life-saving, anything that's life-saving or necessary treatment, instead of jumping to medicine is bullshit altogether. right? That leap from big pharma is corrupt, the establishment is messed up, to all of medicine and science is bad. The answer is in between. The answer is, is socialized medicine. It's having oversight. It's deprivatization of an industry that profits off our sickness, not our health.
And by the way, like this idea that like we should never believe anything else about COVID because they lied to us. I mean, most vaccines you take do not 100% stop you from contracting the illness you're taking it from. People get the flu who get the flu shot. I mean, obviously, what they said in the beginning about this vaccine ended up not being true. You could believe that they were intentionally lying or not. It doesn't really matter. That it was not true. But it's also a changing virus that has had mutations and variants. So not everything, not every time something turns out not to be true, it doesn't necessarily mean there were bad intentions or they intentionally lied to you. You're trying to catch up with a changing circumstances and a changing virus that was the novel coronavirus. So I got nothing. I don't have much nice to say about Fauci. I mean, he did lie in the beginning of this. They knew people should be wearing masks, and they said, don't wear masks because they had a shortage. What they should have said is, we have a shortage, so we're reserving the masks for our first responders and healthcare professionals. And if you can't stay home because we don't know how deadly this is or how dangerous this is. When they said masks won't help you, they were lying to you. And a lot of people died as a result of that. And the media obviously never took Anthony Fauci to task for that lie. But anyway, we will, as best as we can, try to cover long COVID in particular as we go. Let me read super chats before we go. Where are they, Colin? Oh, are you putting them in a new place that I don't? Oh, comments. There we go. Fly Chopper Fly. Yes. How did Manchin and Sinema get picked to be there? I don't think they had to be picked. I think they had an open invitation since they basically blocked everything the last few years. Thank you.
They're also the rotating villains, so it's easy to throw them in there because that's who the Democrat and Republican parties point to say that nothing gets done. So when and they know their place. So when they come back and everything gets back up into session again, everybody can point to Manchin and Sinema and blame them and say that it was because they were at Davos. And then people will look the other way at the other, 148 members of the Senate.
Absolutely. 222 Double K 1999. Thank you so much. Double K, another 1999. Appreciate it. Fly Champa Fly, $2. Please watch movie Rollerball 1975. It's now real. I'll add that to my list in the 5 minutes of free time per day I have. 1999, Double K, one more time. Thank you, Double K. Das Post Flies, 249 euros. Manchin and Sinema are closer to me right now. Oh, boy.
Sorry, Das Post Fleisch.
Sorry. Tony, $2. There are disabled big people who can't work out. Very true. Very true. Fly Jump Fly, $2. Republicans said, okay, old people die, then hurt the economy. Well, Democrats too, when Biden came in. Biden's policies have not been that much different than Trump, to be honest with you, on COVID.
They've been worse in some ways because at least we were getting checks while Trump was here. Yeah. We did. Where was the 2,000 checks? Where any kind of economic bailout for everyday people? I mean, at least we got some help.
Well, if you remember, he doesn't get nobody ever calls him out during the Democratic primary. In the debate, Biden said COVID treatment will be free. COVID treatment has to be free. Well, yeah. It hasn't been free. Talk to the people nearly going bankrupt for medical bills for like a few days in the hospital from COVID. VA from New York, $5. Curious about MMT. Register for Real Progressives Book Club. Exciting. I just ordered another JFK assassination book, but I'll add. I'll definitely join the MMT Book Club. Dave, $5. There's a classic essay called "The Paranoid Style in American Politics." It's basically described anti-vax hysteria in 1964. Email that to me if you can. info@statuscoup.com. info@statuscoup.com. This is Tony, $10. Zainab is right about social media, but there is also something mental exhausting listening to breaking points in Status Coup during 2020 and 2021. Listening to contrasting views can be draining. Yeah, I guess. I mean, the way I look at it is if you have to be honest with yourself in terms of what you're looking for. If you're not looking to be informed necessarily, and you're just looking to join a like-minded echo chamber, then yeah, I mean, watch channels that just feed you what 100% of what you want. That's basically how Fox News has been dominant for the last 2 or 3 decades. MSNBC is the same. If you're not really looking for news and information, if you're not looking to kind of expand your horizon, if you're just looking kind of to join, the cheering section for whatever your pre-existing views are, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. You just have to know kind of what you're looking for in terms of the content you engage in. If you're looking to, to consume content that aligns with your values, but also maybe be challenged from time to time on your pre-existing views, I think that's the healthier content. I don't watch Fox News all the time, but from time to time, I watch things that don't necessarily, naturally agree with. And I personally like segments, Crystal and Saga, for example, when they're not agreeing. A lot of times they do agree, but I like, you mentioned breaking points when they don't agree. I don't like forced debate. There's this debate bro culture. Let's just debate and put it in all caps when it's not really a debate. But I think it's better. Listen, if you like certain content and, 75% of what you hear, you're aligned with, but you have the host or the channel has a different take on something, that's a good thing. And maybe
sometimes. But what I'm seeing, I agree with you, Jordan, but sometimes what I am seeing too is excusing racism, misogyny, friggin' we're going to go hang out with Nazis and David Duke to support Medicare for all. I'm not saying that that's happening. I'm saying people make those arguments. When it comes to baseline humanitarian values, we shouldn't be setting our values to work with other people, but we should be listening to different values. So I think just be smart about it. Like if somebody has some nuance, one big rift that I see right now is, do people want to take a state by state approach to universal health care or a, national approach? I say both, but I have a lot of nuance on this topic. But there has been binary discussions, and I respect some of the people organizing all across the spectrum for healthcare, right? But those are some of the differences that we can discuss, I believe, as leftists and progressives. But if we're seeding values, if we're calling people anti-woke, if we're bringing people in like Jackson Hinkle into the fold, who has said anti-Semitic, racist, bigoted things because we agree with him on one topic, so we're not going to push back with him on any of the other crazy things he does, that's also been a problem. So I've seen it be both ways. It's like accept, verify, read everything independently, check your sources, take things at, face value. Not just because it's written by New York Times doesn't mean that it's the whole article is fake news. There might be, useful information in there, even though I know that I may not trust them because they're mainstream media, right?
Right.
But I think that they're striking a balance, just like when JFK Jr. was holding the trucker convoy rallies, some of those rallies, his speeches were not just about the mandates for workers. His speeches were anti-vax in general. He leaned back on, he was the guy who said that vaccines cause autism. He leaned back on that in his speeches. He was anti-woke. He talked about the degeneracy of the LGBTQ community in his words, which is obviously a massive issue with bigotry in our country right now. So that's all I would say is, yes, keep yourself open to different platforms, but also don't go so far that we're ceding our values, just basic humanity. Maybe look for that. Look for basic humanity from your sources and what you're reading. And objectivity too, to a certain extent.
I agree. Before we go, again, tomorrow, 5:00 Eastern, have my interview with Thomas Frank, the author of What's the Matter with Kansas, Listen Liberal, Pity the Billionaire. So that'll be at 5:00 Eastern. Right after that, Ty will be hosting at 6:00 Eastern. Thursday will be Ron and Tina with their show at 5:00 Eastern, followed by Tina's Right Wing Insanity Report at 6:00 Eastern. Friday, I'll be back. Also, I think in terms of a caller show, since I have a newborn, I can't go as long as I want because, having a newborn, I can't be live for 2.5 hours. But I think I'm going to probably schedule a call or just a strict caller show where people could call in during the week earlier than the normal live stream. So one day I'll have a live stream earlier in the day to take calls and then the normal live stream. So I'll let you know what day that will be. We might take calls on the normal live stream too. It just depends. But right now I can't do callers on the normal live stream because I can't be live for like 2.5 hours. But stay tuned for that. And please, 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 again, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Make sure you subscribe to our Substack where we're sending out notifications. So we post on our Substack right before we go live. So that's a great way to make sure you're notified. They send out an email when we post on Substack. So we post right before we go live. So you'll get notified that way. We're also going to start doing original news articles on our Substack. So look out for that. Possibly tomorrow we might have one.
Got one coming out in the morning.
Yeah. So written articles on Substack from Status Coup. And also make sure you check out our YouTube Shorts. So YouTube changed its homepage. So now it has a video tab, a live tab for live streams, and a Shorts tab. Shorts is actually on a brand new algorithm or a new algorithm. And YouTube is really pushing Shorts to compete with TikTok. So if you watch our Shorts, which are only 1 minute long, that will help, get us jiggered in the algorithm so we could get it to non-subscribers, get our content in front of new people. So the goal with that, Zaina, would be getting them kind of into the pipeline to hopefully watch our longer content.
Yes. And this goes two ways, you guys, because if you know of action and organizing, of something nefarious going on in your community, about, something corrupt happening, local politics that are important, pollution in your area, people that are struggling to build, housing union, whatever it might be that the mainstream media is going to ignore, please email us at info@statuscoup.com. The Status Coup community is large, and we want to hear from you too. That's the whole point, is also talking to you guys. We're not just bringing on people that's the head of CEOs of banks to talk to. We want to interview you guys. We were talking to a gentleman in in Hawaii the other day that was talking about the pipelines that are busted up there right now that are impacting 10,000 people's lives. We talked to someone who's organizing in Stop Cop City in Atlanta. Just last week, we talked to Tyler Lewis's mom, and Tyler Lewis was stabbed to death on campus, and campus police are investigating it. And the family can't get any information. It's likely that the suspects are white and are being shrouded potentially by the university, the local judicial system as well. So these are the kind of stories that if you hear about them, message us, get it out, help us tell the stories that are impacting your communities and your lives, because that's what we're here for. And as we do more on the ground journalism, you may give us places to go and things that really desperately need to be covered.
So that's info@statuscoup.com. A lot of the times I've broken stories. It's viewers have sent me a tip. Activists have sent me a tip. So definitely do that. And most important, we are built on memberships. So definitely, if it's within your means, join us as a member, statuscoup.com/join. You could join us for $5 to $10 a month, and your membership goes to funding our on-the-ground reporting. And obviously, we're expanding with Zaina, Tina, Ron, Lewis, Kim, who am I forgetting? Steve. Got a lot of mouths to feed. Obviously, we pay people. So please support us if you can. Statuscoup.com/join. You might think $5 to $10 a month doesn't matter. It does, particularly to fund the on-the-ground reporting, which is very expensive. Thank you, Zaina. Thank you, Steve. And we'll be back here tomorrow at 5 o'clock Eastern with Thomas Frank. Have a good night.